Hey, what's up, everyone? Thought I'd touch base with you guys. We see that we had the verdict on the Derek Chauvin trial. I know a lot of people, obviously, the country, the world, was watching the verdict. Um, I think there were those of us that were concerned there'd be a guilty verdict. Um, I thought from the beginning that this would be a guilty verdict, without question. I am interested to see what the phase of when we go ahead and get the sentence for Mr. Chauvin, what he'll get. So we'll see that soon. I guess in about 8 weeks is what they're saying. Pretty much there's nothing else to be said about it. I mean, we know what we saw in the video. We know what happened to Mr. Floyd, and we know ultimately the jury saw it the same way the world saw it. Now I know that there's people out there that want to act like that this is proves that race relations are getting better and all that good stuff. I don't think the verdict means anything more than what it means. It's simply one verdict for one situation that was called, in my opinion, right by the law, by the jury called it right. I did want to talk more about the reactions that I've seen on the internet and some conversations I've had with people online and in person about the outcome of this particular trial. Now, you have those people on the left who are, guarded about, how excited, or I should say how satisfied they should feel with this verdict. And then, of course, you have those on the right who are basically acting like, okay, the dude got found guilty, let's move on, and everything's all well and good. And the reality of the situation is the verdict was a good verdict, and it shows that the criminal justice system can work from time to time for what is right. Hopefully, the verdict does become part of a national dialogue regarding what needs to happen in reform for law enforcement. That's one of the things that I think people need to take from this. And whether you're on the left or you're on the right, or you're Democrat or Republican, or Black Lives or Blue Lives, you should want a better policy outcome that's going to make it safer for officers to work and come out with better outcomes with less unnecessary deaths in dealing with the general public. And I'm not sitting here lumping up every situation that happened on the last few weeks as if it's a George Floyd situation. We've had different events happen and we've had discussions about those. But I've never been one to sit here and try to lump all this up as being one particular thing. I've talked about each situation needs to be addressed individually. Right is wrong, and wrong is wrong. Sometimes the officers are absolutely in the right, and sometimes it's cloudy, and sometimes they're dead in the wrong. That's the reality of the situation. But the underlying problem that does need to be addressed within the law enforcement community is a culture that promotes a bias. And that's not saying all law enforcement officers are racist. That's not what's being said. It's saying that some things need to change in how policing is done for us to get better outcomes. And that's just talking about this particular case with George Floyd. It should not have gone down like this. And this is one of the things we're talking about. It's not talking about any other case of this or that, or if a guy had a gun, or if a guy ran away from the police. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what happened today, what happened with this particular trial. Now, that being said, this has ushered in a few discussions I've had with people about, the fact I know a lot of us have heard about the 7-year-old girl that was killed at the McDonald's in Chicago. Someone shooting at her father ended up killing her. And I think the gentleman that got shot is still in the hospital. And people want to always go to that and say, okay, this is something we need to be worrying about, not the police. And I always say that is putting forth a false choice. We do need to worry about when we want our public officials and we want our public servants to behave better. That's something we need to deal with. And at the same time, we could deal with the fact that we have this issue of crime in some of the communities we're talking about, where some of these questionable actions with police are happening. Yes, of course, there are more people getting shot by regular people in the hood, by other people in the hood, than there is by police. We know this. So we're not comparing tragedies. We're not comparing problems. At least I'm not. Yeah. Yes, I would like to see more of a community. Oh, I won't say community, but more of a public outcry. You got a lot of people that get together and protest when it comes to the police, and I guess that's the easy target. It's kind of low hanging fruit because you can protest the police. The police are part of the government. Getting to the root of the problem, what's going on in the hood, requires some thought and requires some actual, real tough discussions about culture, about how the socioeconomic realities in these areas are affecting family structures. These are things that need to be talked about, and no one really wants to talk about that on the left. And unfortunately, people on the right who are conservative supposedly do want to talk about these things, but they want to talk about it as an end all, as if this is only a situation caused by, personal choice and responsibility without looking at the societal and cultural issues that contribute to this. So again, this I say to simply get to the point of saying that neither the right nor the left nor the Democratic or Republican parties have answers for this. And honestly, I'm not even convinced they're trying to. It seems as if the Democrats and the Republicans are doubling down on their ideological positions, whereas the right and manifesting in the Republican Party wants to talk only about personal responsibility and not about societal issues. And then the left, who wants to overemphasize and speak only of the societal issues and not to the personal responsibility aspect. Both can be problematic to actual solutions. If we're looking for solutions to these problems be it with law enforcement, or problems being with just a random regular crime in these affected areas, and we need to have a solution that is more comprehensive, more nuanced, actually being able to sit down and have conversations as people from the left or the right to solve the problem. Because the one thing we all should want is better outcomes in all these situations. And that is, if that is what we want, that is truly, if we are truly wanting better outcomes, then it's not about you being a conservative. It's not about you being a liberal. It's not about you being a Democrat. It's not about you being a Republican. It's not about you being black or white. Whatever it is, it comes down to wanting what is best for the community and being about what's right. All right. This thing with Derek Chauvin, this should never become a Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, this or that situation. It should always have been about wanting to see what is right. What is right. And that's what it comes down to. What it comes down to is, discussing what we want. And one of my Facebook friends just commented that Democrats are still on the right. That type of idiotic talk, and I'm not calling you an idiot, you're a friend of mine, but that type of idiotic talk is why we can't have any real discussions. You got people on the left who are so far into their ideology, so brainwashed, and so, what's the word for it, religiously tied to left-wing dogma, that they refuse to acknowledge that the party that represents the left is the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party it hasn't quite gone, pardon my language, batshit crazy to the left. I don't know what you guys want, some socialist or communist state, but that's not good for anybody. And you should learn from what happened to the Republican Party. The Republican Party went batshit crazy to the right. All right. And now look at what we have. And can I prove you wrong, the person who's asking? I don't need to prove you wrong. You're wrong at face value. And, bottom line, you're wrong at face value. If you're not knowledgeable enough to see how you're wrong, then that means you need to buy my book. Because I guess the game is to be sold, not told. I can't sit here on a podcast and have a whole public policy class and a whole political science class in order to teach you how you're wrong when we're talking about the Democrats being on the right. That's to say that, yeah, the Democratic Party is not communist and not socialist. That's true. But let me explain why you're part of the problem in forwarding that narrative. You're part of that problem in forwarding the narrative that the Democrats are actually on the right, because it plays into the radical right, saying that the Democrats or people on the left really want to be communists and socialists, when your own party isn't left enough for you, because I don't know what aspect of leftness that they're not embracing. But I mean, this is the party that, you guys are aligning with, aside, unless you are part of the Socialist Party or the Communist Party. When you say the Democrats are just part of the right, Basically, you're giving fuel to the radical right to say that those people on the left who are pushing Biden to go for the left really want anarchy, or you want the Antifa type of world. And I'm just saying this is, I don't think you guys understand the long game of what's going on here politically. We have some dangerous situations happening within the culture here, within the social political environment, where we're allowing the extremes to run this particular discussion. And it's the extremes on the left and the right. Right now, the extremes on the right have pushed the Republican Party to the absurd, where now, if you're not a Trump supporter, if you're not supporting the Make America Great Again campaign, you are considered some type of communist or uber liberal. And then on the left, if you're not supporting every leftist, ideology, then somehow the people on the left consider those people to be sellouts or part of the right. And honestly, you extremists are part of the problem. What it comes down to is that people need to sit down and have conversations. It's just that simple. You got to have conversations, and you cannot let the fringes on the right and the left push the discussion, because in pushing that discussion, you're really not going to get any good public policy out of it. And what you're going to get is no one's going to really win ultimately, aside from the ultra rich. They will ultimately win because of this ridiculous discussion we're having. But that being said, I'm not going to push the line and have a long social political talk. But I will say to anyone who really wants to understand what's going on in American politics, I think that you really need to take a look, step outside of your echo chamber, and actually learn something outside of what's being force fed to you that makes you comfortable in your position. If you're comfortable in your position, you don't feel challenged, that means that you're limiting your worldview, and you're limiting the ability to be able to challenge your thoughts and actually learn from thoughts that may not line up with yours. That being said, I'm going to keep it at this. I'm glad that the verdict worked the way that it did. I'm thankful that people acted and conducted themselves accordingly. I haven't heard about any mass, rioting or looting, and I'm glad to hear that. The protesters that were out protesting were exercising their constitutional right, and they did so in a peaceful manner, apparently, which is always good to see. And hopefully, this is the beginning of something that will end up leading to some policy changes, not just in Minneapolis, not just in the Midwest, but across the country, regarding how law enforcement is dealt with. But more importantly, let me be clear about this policy change stuff. I'm not talking about the silliness that the radical left is pushing, the defund the police and, we got to demilitarize the police and all those things. Those are red herrings. That's stuff people throw out there just to say something. No, I'm talking about the real hard work of people sitting down with law enforcement, with community leaders, to actually come up with comprehensive change that is going to have a positive effect on not just the communities that are having these problems or the communities that are having problems with crimes, but have a positive effect and be able to be, basically a pattern for society itself, and how we can actually sit down and fix things, sit down and actually come to solutions to problems. So that being said, man, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. It's late. I just wanted to touch base because of what happened today. And, I wish you all well. We'll be talking again soon. I'll be getting back to the music shows. I'll be getting back to our regular news programming, and where we can talk about other events and other news, more, on the world stage as well as in our national stage that's affecting us. Because yes, while our eyes were on this trial, there's still other things going on in our country that need to be discussed. There's still policy that needs to be discussed. We have an infrastructure bill that needs to be discussed. Honestly, I'm supporting that because our infrastructure does need to be built better, to be rebuilt better, to be improved and reinforced. That is a conservative position. Conservative position is you fix a leaking roof right away. You don't let it keep leaking before the roof falls in. So any conservative person out there saying they're against an infrastructure bill, you're not really a conservative. You're just, in my opinion, you're just a person who feels that being cheap or being stingy or being greedy and hoarding wealth as opposed to actually investing in your country is the right way. That's not conservative, whether you believe it or not. That being said, We're going to go ahead and get up out of here. You guys have a nice night. I'll be probably talking to you later this week or this weekend. Like I said, stay safe out there. Get vaccinated if you haven't, and take it easy. Peace.